The Draymond Green suspension is warranted, over the top, ridiculous, a sign of the end for the Golden State Warriors. Let's get into it, but first, please remember to hit that sub button if you've not already on YouTube. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, wherever you all get your podcasts. We really appreciate all the support, and if you subscribed everywhere, please tell people about us, share our content. Like I said, we're very grateful as you help us continue to build this community. This will be a shorter episode. Grant and I will be coming back with some full-length stuff on Friday as trade season kicks off. This will be like a mini. It's a 2.5 episode, and we're going to talk about Draymond Green and the Golden State Warriors. The league announced that Draymond will be suspended indefinitely after he punched, flailed, knocked Yusuf Nurkic across the face during Golden State's loss to Phoenix on Tuesday night. It was disastrous looking, and Draymond Green afterwards said, basically, I don't apologize for my actions normally, but I do apologize to Yusuf. He said, I'm not a flopper, but I do sell calls by trying to basically flail my body, which equates to flopping, by the way. I thought that was bizarre. There was Yusuf Nurkic after the fact did say afterwards that he doesn't know what's going on in Draymond's life, but he hopes that he gets help. That's like, are we really going to kick Draymond while he's kind of down and being dragged through the mud on social media and from analysts? I'm probably not the biggest fan of that, but at the same time, you were just punched in the face. Like, if you're going to seize that opportunity to, I'll say, not take the high road because it wasn't necessarily a pot shot, then sure, whatever, go ahead. I can't really knock him for saying it. The reaction to Draymond being suspended indefinitely, it was not, I feel like in years past there would have been pushback of, oh, this is too long. How is that not clarification? There's talk that he's going to go to counseling. He has to meet with the commissioner. His agent, Rich Paul from Clutch Sports, will be there as well. If he's on the Ja Morant therapy or counseling, timeline, he should be back in the lineup by Sunday for the Warriors. It only takes 72 hours to really reinvent yourself. More seriously, though, when you look at specifically the interview that Steve Kerr gave after that game, even the Warriors seem just exhausted by this prepubescent clownery that Draymond Green has been espousing for a large majority of his career. And I do think, look, the whole counseling situation, I don't want to denigrate it just because that stuff is important. And if you can go through it, and if Draymond actually thinks that he needs help and wants to address it, great. You're 33 years old, I believe. You've been in the league now an extremely long time. You've won 4 titles. You've cost your team at least one other when you look back at the kick from 2016. And then there's also a lot of people think Kevin Durant was going to leave in the first place, but that public spat at the beginning of the season with Draymond Green certainly couldn't have helped things. This has been your shtick for so long, and the Warriors have put up with it because you are a generational defender, one of the best defenders in NBA history. You are an exceptional playmaker. You are the heart and soul of their team through so many seasons. And in some respects, he still can be a transformative defender. He is not worth the baggage anymore. Like, we have reached the point now where he has submarined Golden State's season or their chances by basically, Ja Morant was suspended for 25 games. And by the time he comes back and plays, there's a chance that he just might have more minutes under his belt than Draymond Green. And this stuff is just getting out of hand. If you were actually going to address it, or if you cared about changing, then you would have done so maybe after you cost your team a championship in 2016, or were the driving force behind them not winning the championship. And I get it. He was also the impetus behind them actually winning titles in the first place. He's not that player anymore. And you have to, the baggage, as cruel as it sounds, it has to be at least commensurate with the value you're bringing on the court. And that's just not what he's doing anymore. The Warriors are worse defensively with him on the floor for the first time in his career. He's allowing opponents to shoot 63% at the rim, which is not, by the way, a terrible mark, but it is by far and away the worst mark of his career. I do think a lot of that has to do with the regression. Look at the minutes, the lineups that he plays in. Kevon Looney has not been a great defender this year. And then Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson on most nights have verged on abysmal. And so a lot of that extra pressure is going to fall on Draymond Green, and he's not going to be able to cover up, one, for everyone like he used to, and two, you shouldn't have to cover up for everyone. And there are times just in that starting 5, which is still getting annihilated, where you seemingly would have to cover up for everyone. And so I get that's too tall of an order, but we're looking at someone who just signed a 4-year, $100 million deal over the offseason. He's in the back end of his prime, or at least inching towards it. And you can't have things like this continuing to happen. And it dates back longer than this, but it does seem, Zach Lowe of ESPN had said this, that the Jordan Poole punch kind of broke something within the organization. It definitely seems like it impacted Jordan Poole, but Draymond Green had come out and said, I have to build back up that trust with my teammates to a point where I can be contentious again, where I can be the emotional bellwether, the emotional guiding force of this roster. I don't know if he's ever gotten back there, because if you just look at the body language sometimes from Steph Curry, who everyone knows loves Draymond, and I'm sure he still does, when you look at how just defeated, or listen to how defeated that Steve Kerr sounds, it kind of feels like the Warriors are fed up with his bullshit. And that's what it is at this point, is that it is bullshit. You're talking about a team. It would be so much different because we're watching Klay Thompson just get older. I'm not going to fault Klay Thompson. He's coming back from two of the most serious injuries in basketball. He's into his 30s. He has the pressure of a contract year. He missed out. He passed on, I think, what was it, 2-year, $56 million extension, whatever it was that the Warriors offered him. So he has that wearing down on him. The frustration here isn't that, okay, the Warriors are kind of crawling towards the end of their dynasty. They're just going to play this out. They got their 4 championships, and you're just going to put up with this because you want to keep the legacies intact. You want to keep the players on this roster because they have so much emotional value to the organization. That would be fine if Steph Curry still wasn't one of the 5 best players in basketball. He remains this transformative force who is capable of being the best player on a title contender. He looked gassed by the end of that Phoenix game, and you need to do something to prop him up, and the Warriors have not done that. That is not on Draymond Green, and we'll get into that in a second, but you, as Draymond Green, as players on this team, you need to actively make sure that you're not detracting from what you are able to do around him. And these are diminishing returns now from Draymond. Forget the on or off stuff. Again, that's a larger symptom of a roster that is suddenly deep, the bench, when you look at the minutes that Brandon Podziemski has been giving you. Chris Paul, shots aren't always falling, but he provides a steadiness when he's on the floor. Dario Saric has been good. Moses Moody has been good. You do need to give out shout-outs. Jonathan Kuminga still seems inconsistent. Still doesn't seem like he knows what he's doing a lot of the time, especially on offense. Doesn't feel like he has the trust of Steve Kerr. He's providing you with jolts of adrenaline. And so the Warriors are deeper now, and that should put them in a situation where we had this starting 5 that was statistically one of the, 1 to 5 best lineups in basketball. Yeah, last year. Yeah, they're another season older, but they should still be able to come close to that peak, and you're not. How much of that has to do with Draymond Green being in and out of the lineup right now? I don't know what to ascribe to it, but he's making things way more difficult on Steph Curry and the Warriors than he needs to be. And an indefinite suspension is fine. And I kind of got the sense just from what people were saying and how they were approaching this I wanted to wait until after we saw the suspension to actually comment on it. You knew it was coming. He already got 5 games previously this season. I had thought maybe it would have been like a 10, maybe a 15-game one. Perhaps it ends up being even shorter than this. Again, the way that the John Morant counseling timeline worked out in the March of last season, I guess it's feasible that Draymond Green could be back fairly quickly. But I just wanted to see what it was going to be. But the hints and kind of the breadcrumbs that were being dropped, some were just expecting, could he be suspended for the rest of the year? I really don't think. I never thought it was going to be that unless the Warriors were just telling him to take his ball and go home. Unlike the Pacers, who tried to take Giannis's ball and go home, but that's not actually what happened. I don't know if Grant and I will get into that, but you need to Google that whole Giannis Pacers situation. Just absolutely hysterical. Anyway, this is just like, I'm not going to believe, and I try to be empathetic, and I try not to have these super blasphemous hot takes, especially when the act of counseling is mentioned, and when a player themselves says that they want to be better, they want to get better, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. We are now in year 8,257 of Draymond Green wanting to change or talking about getting his emotions and reactions under control. Go back and watch the Yusuf Nurkic play. I will not buy that it was an accident. And even if it wasn't, you have not earned the benefit of the doubt. Just look at what you choked Rudy Gobert this season. This is just like, how are you still making these mistakes when you are, one, so integral to your team that they can't afford to lose you, but at the same time, you can be actively damaging by either not being there or not being the player that you were a few years ago. And look, you can't fault him for getting older. That's just something. But you can fault him for not being a better decision maker, a more even-keeled player on the court, someone who is smart enough. And this is one of the smartest players in NBA history, probably, especially when you look at how he reads defenses. How he reads opposing offenses. One of the highest IQ players that I've ever watched, and 99.9% of the time, I probably have no idea what's actually going on. And you can still watch him and just be like, whoa, this dude is a genius. You need to understand how important you are to your team, and that in that moment, I'm not a fan of this heat of the moment bullshit. Yes, you can say things that are heat of the moment, like Nikola Jokic calling a ref a motherfucker and getting tossed on Serbia night in Chicago, which apparently has a very large Serbian population. I didn't know that. That was a BS ejection, by the way. Something else Grant and I might touch upon. A lot of weird shit happening in the NBA lately. Anyway, for Draymond Green to either one, not be able to recognize how indispensable he is to the Warriors, or two, and even worse, just not give a fuck and gonna continue to be the author of these antics, it's just, is he even worth the trouble anymore? And I'm just at the point where, no, he's not. The Warriors lack optionality. That's why you had to re-sign him. And I still think he is a very good basketball player here in this moment right now. But is he good enough to warrant having to put up with, I guess the kindest way to put it is this wild card status of, well, what is Draymond going to do next? How many games is he going to miss? Not because of injury, but because he gets suspended. How many games is he going to be tossed out of, ejected from with technicals, or because he does something like this? You shouldn't have to ask that question this late in his career. He should have that under wraps. And so, no, I don't believe that he wants to change. I don't believe that he will change. I hope for the sake of Steph Curry and whatever window he has left with this team, he does. But it's not even just a believe it when you see it. It's a believe it when you see him do it and sustain it over the course of the rest of this season and beyond. He's going to have to work from that deficit of conviction. Basically from, I would think Warriors fans should be absolutely fed up with this guy. This isn't just someone who covers the league at large or someone from another fan base who wants to troll Draymond Green. I know Kings fans were getting a riot out of this. Yeah. And look, that's their right at this point. But like, Warriors fans should be fed the fuck up about this because of what this guy has cost you in the past, no matter how much he has done, and now what he's costing you now without providing you with the oomph necessary to get back up to the level that you're so clearly not at this year. That naturally leads into the question of, all right, well, should they look at trading him when he's going to be trade eligible? I think he's a December 15th guy. By January 15th, he'll be. I didn't check, but I think he's a December 15th guy. Who's going to trade for him at this point? The deal is not, like too lucrative. Could you talk? I was trying to go through just if the Warriors wanted to go the nuclear route, and they won't. I want to make that clear. Is if they do make a move, it's not going to involve Klay. I'd be shocked if it involved Klay. I'd be shocked if it involved Dre. It'd more likely be Chris Paul, young players, picks, or even just because of, depending on who you're getting back, if they're not a ball handler or facilitator. I know you trust Pods in this situation. I know you have Corey Joseph, but it might just behoove you more to go with Andrew Wiggins, other salaries and picks to try and get that player, with the caveat being you're so unathletic as it is right now that you don't want to give up, one of your two most athletic players on the roster, even though he's not necessarily looked at, unless you're bringing back someone who is not just comparable, but a bona fide upgrade in basically every department from Wiggins. But you go through the teams and it's like, Draymond and the Kings would be kind of fun just because it'd be funny. I don't love the floor spacing, but they can figure it out with the way their offense is run, and they need a defender like him. Would he run into the same issues that he's running into in Golden State right now? I don't think so, just because De'Aaron Fox, that's a very physical, athletic guy. Keegan Murray has made a leap on that end of the floor this season, and Golden State is just like the silhouette of Klay Thompson right now, whatever the hell is going on with Andrew Wiggins. I know he dealt with not only injuries last year, but some serious personal stuff. So yeah, that might be a better situation. Atlanta would be another. They just need to change something. I don't know what the deal is there, though. Can you get them to give you DeAndre Hunter and Jalen Johnson? Is that too much? Is that enough? Or are they just saying, hey, we have younger Draymond at home in Jalen Johnson, who's was hitting threes this year before his injury? Although Draymond, to his credit, I think I mentioned this, he is hitting threes, 42.9% on the third most per 36 minutes of his career. He's also shooting 39% on above the break threes. And so it's not just, corner stuff that is buttressing his mark. Just one of the oddities. He's one good 3-point shooting season for his career. Now there's just the second one randomly when he's in the midst of just having this full-blown implosion like the Warriors. Teams after that, there might be interest. Could Houston? I mean, they've built this culture of defense already, and they have one of the better defenses in the league. Could you imagine Draymond, Dylan Brooks, and Fred VanVleet on the same roster? I just don't. If you're, the salaries get tough in this instance, a little bit easier after December 15th. Who are you targeting if you're the Warriors? I actually would love Draymond on the Indiana Pacers. Again, it's just, what is this now? Bruce Brown and Aaron Nesmith? Are the Warriors going to want Benedict Mathurin? Maybe I think Jarris Walker probably needs to be in that deal. You're not going to get Miles Turner. It just gets awkward with buddy, they have the salaries to do it, but what do you want? Are you just taking draft equity? Is it a 3-team deal where the Pacers are sending out Walker and draft equity to Toronto for Siakam or Anunoby, and he's going to Golden State? But at that point, shouldn't Indiana if Anunoby's getting moved, Indiana needs to be involved in it, and so you shouldn't help the Warriors get him necessarily. The Mavericks would be super interesting, but again, if you're the Warriors, what do you want from that team? That's when you get into the territory of, well, we need to seek out a third, fourth team. We're sending out Draymond and stuff as the salary to then bring back is it a Pascal Siakam? Is it an OG Anunoby? In that case, we know Dallas doesn't have the asset firepower to go get an OG Anunoby. Are we waiting on the trade market to develop even further? Who's the surprise candidate that could emerge? A player I've talked about a lot. I don't know that I would predict it, but Lauri Markkanen, just because of what he's approaching in his contract. He's an all-star, fringe all-NBA player, not super young, and the Jazz are at this weird point in their rebuild. You can tell me Utah does anything, by the way, at the trade deadline, that they traded Lauri Markkanen or that they went out and acquired fucking OG, and it wouldn't surprise. They could go with Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck running the show. It wouldn't surprise me with whatever they did. Draymond in Utah would be really funny, but they have enough front court players. They do need the defense. So the suitors are just, I think they would be there. Maybe Detroit would just be like, fuck it, let's bring Draymond back to Michigan, and we have no idea what we're doing anyway. You're not going to get Cade Cunningham in that. You're not going to get Asar Thompson in that deal. I don't know what, as the Warriors, you would want. Yeah, Bojan Bogdanovic is fun, but what else? So there might be teams. I think even Miami might talk themselves into it, even though Bam and Draymond, I think, is a pretty bad offensive fit, even though a healthy Bam this year had really made some strides, on more strides, I should say, on the offensive end. So I want to be clear, there would be teams. I just don't see the team that's going to come and give you an offer that either replicates a lot of Draymond's value in totality. I don't think you're ever going to get his defensive versatility and IQ. It's just, that's not floating around out there right now in gettability anyway, but just someone who in totality, because maybe they're a better shooter, a better ball handler, someone who just does more for you on the offensive end, independent of Steph Curry existing. I don't see that deal sort of existing right now after trying to think about it. I see teams that, like I said, I would love to watch Draymond Green on. I just don't know that they'd be willing to give up the assets necessary to go back to the Warriors or to send to another team that gets them a player they want. And if you are the Warriors, you do need to approach this with some semblance of urgency. This season now, Draymond Green is going to be out for however long. You already have just faded to outside the play-in, as I'm recording this, in the Western Conference. This is not, it does seem like this front office with Kirk Lacob and specifically Mike Dunleavy is going to be a little bit more aggressive and less married to the original core than Bob Myers was. We saw that with the Jordan Poole for CP3 trade. Do they have the stones to go out on the trade market and get that guy that is going to reopen not even a title window, but a playoff window for this core? Are they going to get involved with a Pascal Siakam? If Lauri Markkanen's on the table, are they going to go really hard after him? They absolutely, OG Anunoby would be a great fit on this roster and 29 others, including Toronto's. They need to go after that. I would say the worst player. I'll frame it this way, that the Warriors should be. I think I just named them. Those are the three worst caliber of players that I think could change the Warriors season, where you're looking at, I don't know what Pascal Siakam is this year. The floor spacing is iffy. Is he still a top 25 guy? So let's use, if it's an OG Anunoby or Lauri Markkanen, are those top 35 guys? I don't know where Lowry might rest higher. And so it's sort of that spectrum of top 50 where OG Anunoby is. He could be higher than that. I'm not trying to disparage OG Anunoby here. Through Pascal Siakam, Lauri Markkanen, where it's like top 25 to top 50. That's like, you can't fix this by saying, well, we're just going to acquire a couple guys here and there. Maybe we'll try and get Otto Porter Jr. back from Toronto, bring over Chris Boucher in that deal, or we'll see what other depth pieces are floating around at the trade deadline. Oh, our offense needs juice. Like, are we willing to kind of talk about what the salary matching looks like to get Bojan in there? Or are we more concerned about keeping our bigger salary players because we don't want to trade Dre. We don't want to trade Klay. And CP3's just been maybe a little bit too valuable and comes off the books. And how are we going to upgrade from Wiggins? So we'll keep those and we'll just try and step ladder our way with salaries of Kevon Looney and Gary Payton II. And if we attach Jonathan Kuminga, what could we get? No, like this team needs an infusion of star power alongside Steph Curry. And it's not because Steph Curry is not doing enough. There's no singular player. Well, let's see. I mean, maybe there's like one or two guys. I don't even like Jokic with this roster. Okay, they're probably a contender. Giannis with this roster, probably not. Not enough creation. So there's maybe one player in the league right now that I believe could carry this exact Warriors core beyond where they are at the moment. And so this is not on Steph. He is still good enough to headline a contender. And the Draymond Green suspension is really just an extension of the Warrior season, where they've now gotten to a point where the dynasty is not reaching its conclusion. It's already over. And if the Warriors aren't going to have the gall, the courage to go out and make a trade, they don't just run the risk, but they're essentially co-signing this season becoming a painful, drawn out goodbye to an era that has run out of lightning in a bottle stores. It's over. This team is done as currently constructed and it needs a shakeup. I don't know that needs to include a Draymond Green trade, but wholesale changes really need to be taking place on the court, off the court, and that latter, the off-court stuff, begins with Draymond Green. I don't think it's fair to expect him to change or for this to not happen again or for another incident to not transpire this year. He has, if nothing else, forfeited the benefit of the doubt long ago when it comes to this situation. We'll have to see how long he's out. The Warriors are worse off for it, just as they always are when Green makes his decisions. They were up, by the way, in that Phoenix game. That cost them ground in the Western Conference, and every victory is just important when you're kind of looking at forget about the top of the West, but like even the meat and potatoes in the middle of the Western Conference. These games matter, even this early, and could come back to bite the Warriors later on. So the Draymond Green suspension is fair, expected, warranted. I don't know how long indefinite is going to be. You'll have to let me know if you agree with it. If you think it's too harsh, what do you think the Warriors should do here now? Hit us up in Discord. You can join it. The link's in the podcast and YouTube description. Or comment down below. Let me know what you think. I will be reading the comments, even if I can't respond to all of them. Until next time, which will be very soon. And as always, I leave you with a shout out to the one, the only, Frank Ntilikina. Get well soon, Frank. And apologies too. I'm still going to do this. I have to give it. Apologies to Mr. Reggie Jackson.